I was out with friends and we were going back and forth from my car back to the club, and we were headed back into the club, and David was crossing the street and the light turned and the cars were beeping, and I was complaining to my friend. I was like, how come I can't meet any cute boys? No one wants to give me their number. Like, what's wrong with me? And David started crossing the street and the cars were beeping, and I'm like, Jess, why can't I just find a cute boy like that? And David kind of turned and looked, and I turned and looked at him, and the cars were beeping. And so I turned around and I pulled you out of the street.
Yeah, but I was scaring you because it was 20 degrees outside and you're wearing a tank top and leather pants.
That's true.
And sandals.
And sandals.
Like, who does that?
It's very hot in the club.
Who does that?
And I'm like, listen, you just have to call me.
You had his hands on my shoulder.
I put my hands on his shoulder. I was like, my name is Dustin.
It was so intense.
You have to call me.
I said, do you have a pen? And I said to my friend Amy, she said, I don't have a pen. Let's just go. And he goes, you're going to remember my number. I'm like, first of all, you're too young. You're just a little boy. He's like, I'm 19. Hands on his hip. I'm like, oh, like I said, you're too young. And he said, you're going to remember my number. You're going to call me. And when Amy and I went out that night, after we left the club, we went out to get omelets. And I immediately said to the waitress, bring me a napkin and a pen. And Amy's like, you did not remember his number the whole. I said, yeah, I did. So I wrote his number, scribbled his number down, and called him. That night, actually, left him a message.
It just clicked. And David was my first boyfriend ever. It wasn't like I tested the waters. I was, with multiple people. It was just, it was David. And David's been wonderful, and I've been happy ever since.
However, I did test the waters, and it's because of those testing the waters that night that I met Dustin. I was supposed to meet an ex-boyfriend at a bar that night, and he didn't show up, and I ended up leaving early, and that's what we did.
Right.
So,
thank you, ex-boyfriend.
Fate should have it.
From the time I was in the first or the second grade, people were calling me Twinkle Toes, and these were people that were 6, 7 years older than me. And I always knew I was different. I didn't understand in the second grade or the 5th grade even that it was because I was gay. I just was different. And it wasn't until probably 7th or 8th grade when people started screaming faggot at me in the hallway that I was like, oh, maybe I am gay. It was like, I never came to that self-realization. It was like everyone kind of told me. So my senior year of high school, I had my car, and a lot of things happened to it because it was, I guess, an extension of who I was as a person. There was one time where someone took shaving cream to my car and wrote faggot all over it. I used to park over by the art building. There was a time when someone took oil paint to my car and again wrote faggot and queer all over it. And that hurts. It hurts a lot. And there was a lot of points of very deep depression where, I felt lost and I didn't know who to talk to. And it wasn't until people started, vandalizing my car and it became more open and public that these things were happening to me that people started to come out and support me. And, I wish I could go back and say to myself then, talk about it more. Be open. Be honest. Be more public about it. Share these things with your friends. Be open with your friends about who you are as a person. And let them know that these are things that you're going through. Don't internalize it, because if you don't talk about it, it gets bottled up. And I went through a lot of crap because I just held it inside. And it wasn't, it was a lot of emotional things. And, luckily it never got to be anything horrible, but it's hard. It's hard.
The first time I remember hearing the word faggot, I had to be. I think, 5th grade. We were talking about puberty. They were talking about boys and girls, and they were showing pictures of testicles, and they were showing girls' vaginas, and I kind of looked away, and I remember one of the kids in the class said, oh, because he's a faggot. I remember hearing that, and I remember knowing that they were talking about me. I didn't know what the hell that word meant, but I knew that it wasn't good. I don't want to be that. So I took to using that word myself as a kid, about other kids who were similar to me and using it very outwardly to fit in with those bullies and those kids who used it because they were the cool kids. And it's funny later in life, and you look back and you say, oh, you look in your yearbook and say, well, this one was a jackass, and this one was a jerk, and this one was a bully. It's funny how many of them come out as gay. And sometimes you have the opportunity to go back 10 years later, or 15 years later, or 5 years later at a reunion and say, you were a jerk, but I kind of understand why now, because you really hated yourself so much that you had to find a punching bag, and that happened to be me. So in a way that it gets better when you can grow up and see these things in perspective and find people later in life who didn't mean to be so mean and so vicious and so evil, but were doing it because they were in the same place you were. They just coped a little differently. In January of this year, we started the process of going through trainings and classes to become a foster family.
Right.
Because we've been talking for years about being dads and bringing kids into our life and just raising children. And now we're
waiting
for kids.
Waiting for kids. We're already interviewing schools for them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's it. We're very focused on kids right now.
We are. But you know what else? You know what else I'm thinking about is as we see things getting better, for us, for gay, lesbian people, and everyone else in our group, if you will, humanity. You know, the best thing is to be honest. People come around, and it's not our job to bring them around. It's their job to do the work, and they have to meet us on our terms. You know, be solid and be confident in who you are, and those people will come around if they're worth being in your life, and you continue to work at it. And there's no one and nothing, I would say, worth killing yourself for.